Hello everybody, and a very warm, well, it's rather cold and damp welcome to this week's shed adventure. Well, I was looking around in the shed and I've had my grandson, let me just have a quick slurp of tea while it's still warm. Oh, that's better. And I was talking to my grandson at the weekend, and we wanted to get the wood burner going, and we started playing around with, well, actually we didn't have any firelighters. We'd forgotten the good old firelighters, so we're left with a match and a big chunk of slightly damp wood from the woodshed. So we started having a discussion about getting some fire. So I told him, go off, get on good old YouTube, find a channel like this and see how the great Bushmen survivalists are gonna help us get our wood burning stove on fire. And he came back with a load of things, big saws with twiddling sticks in things, rubbing Boy Scouts together, a whole raft of good Bushman skills. The trouble is, here on Shed Adventures, we are eminently practical and we always live in the real world. So obviously I wanted to go away and do some research because it's just good fun. And then I pulled out some of the things that you see here on the table, and I said, in the real world, Joey, we're not living in a jungle with nothing. There is an awful lot, and if we go climbing and sailing and camping, we always go prepared. What I do find does make me laugh sometimes are the survivalists who fall out of aeroplanes, are naked in the woods, whatever. They always seem to have at least two things with them. They always seem to have an excellent quality knife, and they always seem to have a water bottle. Why? Well, there is no way on this earth you can survive without an excellent quality knife, and Mother Nature actually doesn't provide you much to carry water, so when you do find that elusive and important subject, you need to carry it around. So it always makes me slightly laugh when, of course, they haven't got anything in terms of fire. So you do look at them and go, so why didn't you, when you remembered your lovely machete or you remembered your water bottle, you forgot something simple as a box of matches. So anyway, don't want to put them down though, because it's a hell of a lot of fun. So I said to Joe, let's go and find out how we do it. But the interesting thing is, his mother actually is a woods lady, because she is specially trained in a thing called forest school, where you take youngsters and you take them into a set of woods, all very carefully prepared, no branches going to fall down, and you do woodland things. You make whistles out of wood, you make fire, you understand something, a little bit about nature, which is just fantastic. So what she asked me to make her, and this was years and years and years ago, was a little fire starting kit. And here it is. Fire starting box. So I knew where this was. It was in the man drawer in the kitchen. So I dragged it out, and Joey and I had a bit of fun looking through it, because I hadn't opened this up for about 5 years, and I don't think Tracy had used it for a long time. So we had a look inside at all the bits and bobs I'd prepared, so that pretty much anywhere in the world, if you had this with you, you could start a fire. So the obvious thing is something to make a spark with, and good old-fashioned spark maker with, well, it's not a flint anymore, and a nice sharp steel, and there's your spark. You can make sparks all day long with that. Graphite rod, I think it is. So you need that, and of course you need some kindling, something that is going to catch a light. And we have to assume in the UK or in Europe the woods are soaking wet and you're not going to find anything dry. So the answer actually is to keep something in a little poly bag in the bottom of your rucksack. But if not, I looked at the stuff I prepared here, and the first thing, and there's lots of it in here, which is relatively easy to find, is sheep's wool. There we go. Beautiful Beautiful lump of sheep's wool, perfectly dry, naturally a fire lighter because it's soaked in lanolin, natural lanolin from the sheep, and this will absolutely burst into flames. I need to do an outside demo before I set my table on fire. And of course I threw in a good old-fashioned cheap as chips fire lighter, which is always worth carrying because that will give you hours of burn. I'd wrapped up some matches in some tin foil for her. I'd actually chopped up some little bits of wood from a dry stick. It's always worth keeping a dry stick if you want to play woodsman's around, because it's very, very easy just to get yourself a nice pile of dry, tiny, a little starting stuff. Very, very easy. And then I noticed something. I noticed some cotton wool. Yeah, and I'd soaked that in meths for her. And then this. Now, I'm going to have to make this episode not for children. What's that? That's a November the 5th child sparkler. And I can assure you, if you get that alight, in amongst even some quite damp kindling, and you shouldn't do this. This is no recommendation. Any children watching, don't touch, play with fireworks. But if you are an adult and if you're a bushman, whatever they cover a child sparkler in, that is not going to go out, and that will get a lot of heat. They recommend that when it's finished, it will still glow, and you put it in water. So you can imagine what that will do with even some vaguely dry kindling. So that's her fire starting kit, which is all very good and all very backwoodsman's like. But I said to Joey, that's all fun and games really, because in the real world, as people know, we've spent some time in the Antarctic. There is no kindling. There is no second chance. You need your means of fire. You need your stove. If you can't have a stove, you can't melt water, and so you're not going to last very long. And of course, all your food is freeze dried as well. So fire becomes important. And while you can make up all these wonderful things that survivalists talk about, the answer is you just need to be prepared. So let's just talk a few things, because it was interesting, because I showed him various things. So there we have the standard match. I think everyone would recognise that. And I haven't got my SwanVestas, so that's a safety match. Now, interestingly enough, I can strike that all over here. Because it's a safety match, it won't light. It will only light when I put it on the side of the box. Trouble with all of those, notoriously they get damp. This gets damp. If I left this overnight in the shed, it will struggle next morning. SwanVestas, and I've left the SwanVestas in the house. They're not a safety match, and I can remember in the old pubs in London, they used to have a London brick, and a London brick has a hollow in the middle, and there'd be SwanVestas in there. They normally have a red head. And the reason they're not a safety match is because if you rubbed it across the brick, or if I rubbed it across here, it would catch light. Therefore, there's more chance of a box of SwanVestas bursting into life maybe than a set of safety matches. So they're useful because you don't need, if you've got them and they are kept reasonably dry, you don't need a box which will soak up. And obviously matches now come very useful, nice long match. Great actually for getting up there into a tilly. Once you've let it go, and maybe this burnt down a bit low, as I've spoken on other videos, you can reach up without touching the mantle and get that. But what I was going to show you is this, and you'll all be going, well, what's that? Well, this is actually a collector's item. This is quite a rarity. This is Bakelite. So this is the stuff the old black phones were made of. If you've ever seen an old black and white movie, that old dial-up phone, Bakelite. And what is it? Ship's lifeboat matches. So there's a few words in there. Ship, wet, windy, the Atlantic, rescue. Lifeboat, right? Wet, damp, waves, just been torpedoed, and you need to get some fire. You need to get some hot food. You've got a stove, or you even just want to have a cigarette. So here you have the ultimate, a ship's lifeboat match. So what you've got on the bottom is a striking patch. You've got a screw-on lid with a seal, rubber seal. And then in here, some of these I've used, you have this strip which holds matches. Now, let's do a quick compare and contrast for you. So, normal match. Yeah. No. Ship's lifeboat match. Now I think you can see, but the ship's lifeboat match is made up of two different parts. It's got this very easy to burn or easy to strike little bit on the top. You can see the different in colour. And then it's got this. And I think this material is very similar to what's on that sparkler, which is why I put that in the fire starting kit, because it doesn't burn with a flame, it sparkles like a sparkler. Like a sparkler. So I think it's slightly different material to just a straightforward match head. I think the heads are the same, but I think the body of a ship's lifeboat match is different. So different, in fact, that if you get this burning and you plunge it in water, pull it back out again, it'll reignite. So I think, I'm no metallurgist, but I think there might be a bit of phosphorus in there or something, maybe some chemists will tell us, that allows that to, once it's started, to keep burning. And water is not a problem. So if you're on a ship or in a lifeboat and the waves are coming over you, you can get that burning. You can get your pipe, your cigarette, or hopefully your little meth stove burning and get yourself some hot food. So that's a ship's lifeboat match. So if you want to be a survivalist, I would suggest that one of the first things you want to get yourselves is when you jump out your aeroplane and you've got nothing to survive with apart from a knife, a canteen for some water, is you have the common sense to make sure you've got one of those, because that is completely watertight, completely indestructible, and you've got guaranteed flame in there. So no rubbing sticks together, no rubbing Boy Scouts together. You've got guaranteed unbustable flame. And I did a little bit of research. You can still get ship's lifeboat matches. What makes this a collector's item is the actual box, the originality of the box. That was issued on one of my first expeditions, so 30. That's probably 45 years old. That particular item. So I keep it as a bit of a souvenir, which is why I don't really want to light one of the matches. It will still light. If someone really wants me to, I'll light one and show you how a 40-odd-year-old match will burn. It will still light today. Absolutely fabulous. Now, there are other things that you get from burning that are important, but there's other ways, modern ways around it. The next one is heat. We need a fire. We need heat. No, you need heat. Do you need a fire? Not necessarily. So, I used these recently. These are hot pads. This is empty because it got used. We had a lady. I think I was mentioning another episode. Had an accident in the village, and she was lying on the floor for a couple of hours waiting for an ambulance, and she was getting seriously cold. So we could put some hot patches on the back of her neck, on her stomach, on her wrists, everywhere where there's lots of blood flow, to keep her nice and warm. And these are just a chemical reaction. I think there's probably, I don't know, iron filings in here or something. And a chemical. You unpack them, shake them, and it reacts with the oxygen, and it becomes, yeah, really warm. Not won't burn you, but it's hot. And I carry these. Normally carry them in my canoeing life jacket, because if you're canoeing, even if you've got gloves on, your gloves are wet or your top's wet, you can just put one of these on the back of your neck. You can put one of these, even if you've got wet gloves, up here. And you can just feel the warmth. The blood is flowing around, getting warm, and it's super bit of kit. So we don't need fire to keep warm necessarily, and this will work as long as you've got oxygen. This will fire up and produce, I would think, it's a good hour or so, maybe a bit longer than that. I can't actually says no, 8 hours. 8 hours Clearly hotter at some points than it is at the back end, but 8 hours of warmth, that's pretty incredible. Readily available, I would get some if you're into camping or the outdoors or a bit of health and safety. Even put one in your medical kit, because as I said, it helped me look after a lady and maybe, I don't know, stop her going into shock or whatever, because as her body temperature falls, that's the danger. What else have we got? Well, it's got to give light as well. Fire on a candle or something gives light. Yes, we've got torches and all the rest of it, but if, again, you're in a survival situation, maybe everything's wet and damp. So let's come back to good old chemicals again. Sialoom, other mates are available. Chemlite, it's a Sialoom, by any other name. Just crack it, open it up, it's a tube, crack it, two chemicals mix, and you've got light. I've used these in anger, in emergency situations, actually, because of the way they are. This one hasn't, you know, you can, it's got a little hook on it, so you can hook it on a tent. Equally, you can hold it in your mouth. I know it sounds really daft, but when you're in an emergency situation, you've got no light, you need light, you need both your hands. You can just crack one of these, totally indestructible, grip it in your teeth, and you can try not, mend an engine, do whatever you've got to do. And again, I would strongly recommend, if you're into a bit of camping, mountaineering, sailing, motorbiking, anything where you're going to be out and about, you need a bit of heat, got the solution. Need a bit of light, we've got the solution. Both chemical based, both indestructible, and we don't have to worry about matches and fires and kindling and feather sticks and all the good stuff that you see on YouTube. So we've got that. We've got our ship's lifeboat matches. So what's the secret? What does a man with experience, what does Shed Adventures HQ take? Well, none of that. That. Yes, the disposable cigarette lighter of old. Carried these throughout my trip in the Antarctic. We had, the military guys will know, we had a little book of matches, the old cardboard book of matches, in with our rations. But the rations, well, they'd been on the island, on the Falkland Island, right through the Falklands War. They were stored all over the island, frozen. Some of the packaging was broken, so who knew? So for a year on an expedition, I carried a couple of these. You know, indestructible, unless you really want to smash it with a hammer. Oh, they'll let you down. No, they just don't. They are simple, they are robust, and they give you fire. My recommendation is, if you're into anything water sports, mountaineering, sailing, climbing, canoeing, just carry some of those. £1.50, £1.80. I think these are refillable. I wouldn't even bother. And in fact, the older ones are even better, because the older ones actually had a wheel and a little striker. So even if you ran out, you actually got a spark. Enough of a spark to get your kindling going. So super versatile. I would recommend, you know, that little pocket in your tent, in the corner of the tent, just chuck one in and leave it in there forever. They don't rust, it's all pretty much plastic. Your rucksack, throw one in the bottom of your rucksack where you never go. Stick one in the top pocket of your favourite winter mountaineering jacket. So you've always got them. One of these always lives in that primer stove of mine. Just chuck it in the back of the stove, open up the stove, it's always there. And it's the old-fashioned one, so even if for some reason it's got broken, it's leaked, I can get a spark out of the starting mechanism, enough to light some meths. So that is the secret of bush survival, is keep yourself a disposable cigarette lighter at hand, and you will not be you will not be struggling. And while everyone will tell you, no, they'll do this, that we have to live in the real world. The real world these are ultra reliable, they're super cheap, and if you've remembered your knife, I'm sure you can remember to bring one of these next time you bail out of an aircraft. Even if you want to be really silly, tape one to your knife. If you're a survivalist, tape one to your knife, because somehow you never forget your knife when you're a survivalist, and if you've got that taped to your scabbard, you won't be rubbing sticks and making a big meal of keeping warm. So a very quick shed adventure, hopefully relatively quick. And I hope people found that interesting. It's just a view, but it's a view based on real life experiencing things we've done. And while it's great fun on YouTube to make a big fuss, and while it's great fun to show children special fire starting kits and kindling, and while it's great to send them out to forage for scraps of sheep's wool off the barbed wire fence, the secret is a good old disposable lighter. Okay, everybody, I have to go and get a warm up for my tea. Have a great week, and let's hope for some better weather, and I'll catch up with you soon. Thank you very much. Bye bye now.